Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Namaskaram. Today I'm going to start talking about a problem that I think many of us face when we first start try to practice self-investigation, Atma-vichara. That is, in order to investigate what we are, we clearly know we need to have a clear understanding of what we are and what we are not. And for that, we first need to distinguish the knower from the known. Because what we are investigating, what we are seeking to know is the reality of ourself. Now we seem to be the knower, the subject, the one who is aware of all this. We are seeking to know the reality of this I that is aware of all this. But many people at first begin to somehow form an idea that I is something that they must look for, as if I was something other than themselves. But obviously I is nothing other than ourselves. So the I that we are to investigate is ourself alone. During our last meeting, one of the questions I asked was from someone who had written, when I sit for self-inquiry, I feel my body self looking at my mental voice, and that voice is my voice, I. From here, what do I focus on for the self-attention part of the practice? Is this voice the I that needs to be watched, and the watcher being the self-attention? Or is it the body feeling of I that I need to focus on? So I had replied something like that. I can't remember exactly what, but the person who had written that question again wrote another comment in which he or she wrote, "The voice question at 1903 was from me. Thank you for answering. I do hope I can clarify a little more. When I say the body self, what I mean is when I close my eyes, there's a feeling of my body sitting for self-inquiry. Then the voice I speak of is amongst the mental chatter in my mind, but more so, it is the subject, the person the I take myself to be, the voice of which I identify myself as. So basically, the one who thinks I in literal terms in my mind, the I personality, the I that has this voice of which I identify and base my actions on. The voice seems to feel like an identity, me, that is latched onto the body feeling, both of which, the voice and the body feeling, is what I identify as or take myself to be. This voice, me, seems to at times feel the body as separate, but at the same time also makes up my identity of myself currently in the waking state. Is this then the ego? Then the second part, what do I focus my attention on? Is it this voice of myself, the me personality, that I need to find the source of? Or is it the body feeling of me being present, sitting for inquiry? Hope this is a little more clear. I don't mean body feeling as a particular part of the body, but in a greater sense, the body feeling of me in the material physical body that is in the waking state. That is what this person seems to be. This person is talking about two things, about the body feeling and about the voice that he or she calls I. But anything that is known, anything that appears or disappears, is something other than ourselves. I'll just go through the question and try and clarify some things. When I say the body self, what I mean is when I close my eyes, there's a feeling of my body sitting for self-inquiry. That is, the body is an object, though as ego, we always experience ourselves as the body. We experience the body as if it's ourselves. We need to distinguish ourselves from this body which we now take ourselves to be. This body is clearly an object known by us. And the term body, when Bhagavan talks about body, he's not just talking about the physical body, he's talking about all the five sheaths. That's the physical form of the body, the life that animates the body, the pranamaya kosha, the mind that operates within the body, the manamaya kosha, the intellect, and the will. These are the five sheaths. The intellect is called the Vijnanamaya kosha or buddhi, and the will is called the Anandamaya kosha or chittam. These are all objects known by us. The body is clearly an object known by us. The prana, the life that is animating this body, the breathing and all the other physiological functions that signify life in the body, these are all things known by us. The mind, that is all the perceptions, memories, thoughts, feelings, emotions, and so on. These are all things known by us. The workings of the intellect are known by us. The will, which in its grosser form consists of likes, dislikes, desires, attachments, and so on, are clearly objects known by us. In its subtler form, the will consists of vasanas. Vasanas are the inclinations that give rise to the likes, dislikes, desires, and so on. So it's the desires and so on in their seed form are called vasanas. These also we're aware of. We are aware constantly our mind is moving here and there under the sway of its inclinations, under the sway of its vasanas. So these are all things known by us. So who is the I who knows all these things? The I that knows all these things is not one amongst these things. The person who wrote the question said, the voice I speak of is among the mental chatter. You're talking about the voice I. If it's something among the mental chatter, then it's something known by us. He talks about the feeling of my body. Any feeling, a feeling is something that is felt. What is felt is an object. What we are to investigate is not any feeling, but the one who feels, the feeler, we can say, one who is aware. We are not investigating any thoughts, we're investigating the thinker. We're not investigating anything that is known, we're investigating the knower. So it's always the subject. He says, in one point he says he said that this voice is the subject, the person I, the one I take myself to be. Anything, no voice, no object can be the subject. The subject is that which knows all objects. The person I, the one I take myself to be, that is anything we take ourselves to be is something other than ourselves. So we need to leave all identifications. We need to we need to try to distinguish ourselves as the knower, the seer, the experiencer from whatever is experienced. Whatever is experienced or known comes and goes. The experiencer remains constant. So anything that appears and disappears cannot be what we actually are. All phenomena appear in waking and dream and disappear in sleep. Since they do not exist in sleep, they cannot be what we actually are. So nothing that can be described in any way can be what we actually are. We are that which knows all these things. So we need, if we have difficulty understanding this, we need to think about it very carefully and try to understand what we need to investigate is not any object, anything that is known, anything that appears or disappears, anything that exists at one time and not at another time, is not what we actually are. So we are trying to investigate ourselves, the subject. What we actually are is not the subject or knower, it is the reality of the subject. The subject is ego, which itself appears and disappears, because ego is the adjunct conflated awareness, I am this body. That is what we actually are, is the pure awareness, I am. But when we rise as ego, we're always aware I am. We're aware I am now in the waking state. We were aware I am in sleep, and we're aware I am in dream. But the difference between our awareness of ourself in sleep and our awareness of ourself in waking or dream, in waking and dream, though we're aware I am, we're not just aware I am. We're aware I am this body. So we identify ourselves with a certain set of adjuncts. That adjunct conflated awareness, that is ego. But the reality of ego is the pure awareness I am. So we are investigating the subject, but now the subject, the ego, is identified with objects, but it's only the subject aspect that we are investigating. Bhagavan expresses it very nice. Well, it's been very nicely recorded in Maharshi's Gospel. Bhagavan explains that ego is what is called Chit Jada Granti. Chit means awareness, Jada means what is not aware, and Granti means not. Not in the K-N-O-T. So it is the not that binds together awareness and what is not aware as if they were one. So this conflation of this fundamental awareness I am with the body, which is non-aware, is Jada, is what is called ego or Chit Jada Granti. So Bhagavan says, in your investigation into the source of the Ahamvriti, Ahamvriti again is another term for ego, you take the essential Chit aspect of ego. So ego is this adjunct conflated awareness, I am this body. What we're investigating is only the fundamental awareness I am. And in order to investigate this, we need to focus our entire attention on that and thereby leave aside everything else. To the extent to which we focus our attention on this fundamental awareness of our own being, I am, to that extent, all the adjuncts will drop off, because the adjuncts are not holding us. We are holding the adjuncts. That is, by rising as ego, as soon as we rise as ego, we project and grasp the body as I, and having experienced ourselves as I in this body, we are then constantly aware of things other than ourselves. So what we need to attend to is not anything other than I alone. And I is not one among many things. I is that to which all other things appear. That's why Bhagavan often gave a clue, to whom. That doesn't mean we have to question to whom. He said we need to investigate to whom. That means we need to investigate ourselves, the one to whom all other things appear. So the body appears to us. The so-called voice I appears to us. Whatever appears to us, whatever is not permanent, whatever comes and goes, whatever undergoes any kind of change, is something other than ourselves. So what we need to investigate is the one to whom all these other things appear. So in other words, we need to investigate the knower, and not any object that is known. We need to investigate the subject, the one to whom all objects appear. Bhagavan has explained this in so many ways, but in however many ways it is explained, it's up to each one of us to grasp for ourselves what is being pointed at, because words can never express this perfectly. As Bhagavan explained, the language is designed for communicating within duality. So language is very good at describing objects. Its language fails when it comes to describing what we actually are, which is the pure being awareness. So the words can only be pointers, but it's up to each one of us to understand what the pointers mean. However clear, say television signal is being very clearly transmitted, if you have a very old and defective television, you won't get a clear picture. You'll only get a very fuzzy picture. The defect lies in the receiving set, not in the transmission. So Bhagavan has transmitted his teachings both through his words and eternally through silence. He is transmitting his teachings. But we are the receiving set. We need to attune ourselves to his teachings. We need to dwell deeply upon his teachings to grasp what he is saying. And most importantly of all, we need to put into practice what we've understood. But of course, we cannot put into self-investigation into practice until at least we have a basic understanding. So the first thing we need to do is to clearly understand the distinction between the knower and the known, between awareness and any object of awareness. What we are investigating is not any object of awareness, it is awareness itself. And awareness is what is always aware of itself as I. So it is only I we are investigating, not anything other than I. I hope this answer helps to clarify this person's questions, but it's up to each one, as I say, it's up to each one of us to understand these things for ourselves. Words are limited in their power. And there's one more question that I was asked in one of the comments on the YouTube channel, also related to the practice of self-investigation. So I'll just answer this, and then I'll answer other questions. This person wrote, after practicing for about a year, it is found that there is no mental chatter. Is this piece merely a reflection of the Atman? It is said in Sri Sadhu Om, and then he quotes the Sanskrit verse. This is actually verse 37, and the approximate meaning of the verse is, when one adopts the practice, sadhana, by means of which one's mind, which is restless like the wind, is made still perpetually, then the purpose of taking birth as a human being is fulfilled. That is also the mark of a true scholar. That's how it was translated in that place, but I think that was on the Arunachal archive site. The word for scholar there is Pandit, but Pandit actually, in its original meaning, has a deeper meaning than scholar. Though Pandit generally is used in the sense of scholar, here it's referring to the jnani, the one who truly knows. So the comment continues. So then, when the mind no longer appears as thought, is that what is meant? It feels like being asleep and awake at the same time. You called it manolaya, but is permanent cessation manonasa? Please, kind sir, can you help with this? That is, again, anything that appears and disappears is not what we actually are. So if we experience peace of mind, peace is a state of mind. Peace of mind alternates with agitation or disturbance of mind. Peace of mind is not permanent. It's not the nature of the mind to be peaceful. It is, the mind is constantly, activity is the very nature of the mind. Without activity, the mind cannot survive. We are not looking for any temporary experience, like an experience of peace. What we are looking for is what is permanent. What is permanent is only our awareness of our own being. So, in this verse of David Kalotram, I am not sure the exact word in Sanskrit, but in the English translation, it said, the means by which one's mind, which is restless like the wind, is made still perpetually. There the word perpetually is the key word. we are not looking just for temporary stillness of mind. We experience temporary stillness of mind every night when we fall asleep. But however long we remain in sleep, we don't get any closer to knowing what we actually are. So what we are seeking, sleep is just a temporary cessation of mind. What we are seeking is permanent cessation, manonasa. Temporary cessation is of no use to us. So it's in the waking and dream state when the mind is active, but we need to be investigating ourselves. We are not, as I say, we're not looking for any temporary experience like a peace of mind or anything. What we are looking for is to know and to be what we actually are. Only when we experience ourselves as we actually are will the mind cease in such a way that it will never rise again. So that is the state that this verse of Devikalotram is referring to, the state in which the mind is made still perpetually. That is the state of manonasa. Manonasa can be brought about only by means of self-investigation. That is, the mind, the root of the mind is ego, the false awareness, I am this body. So that is ignorance. That is what is called avidya or ajnana, is nothing but this false awareness, I am this body. In this false awareness, the real awareness is there. The real awareness is the fundamental awareness, I am. So long as though we are always aware I am, so long as we are aware of ourselves as I am this body, I am this person, we are not aware of ourselves as we actually are. So in order to destroy this false awareness of ourselves, awareness of ourselves as something other than what we actually are, we need to be aware of ourselves as we actually are. And to be aware of ourselves as we actually are, we need to investigate ourselves. In other words, we need to fix our attention on ourself alone. The more we attend to ourself alone, that is, the more we attend only to I, the more ego will subside. That, as Bhagavan made clear, the nature of ego is to rise, stand, and flourish by attending to things other than itself. So as soon as we rise as ego, we first grasp a body as I. And so long as and without grasping a body as I, we cannot for a moment stand as ego. So as Bhagavan says in verse 25 of Ulujunaptu, grasping form, it comes into existence. Grasping form, it stands. In those first two sentences, the form he's referring to is the form of a body, the form of 5 sheaves that he referred to as body. And then he says, grasping and feeding on forms, it flourishes abundantly. That is, having grasped the form of a body as I, we are then constantly attending to other forms. Forms here means objects of any kind, phenomena of any kind. With anything that can in any way be distinguished from any other thing is a form. So, so forms here means not just physical forms, thoughts, feelings, emotions, all these are different forms. So by constantly attending to forms, constantly attending to things other than ourselves, objects or phenomena, this is the food on which the mind lives. So Bhagavan says, grasping and feeding on form, it flourishes abundantly. Uruvittu urupatram, leaving form, it grasps form. So this is the nature of ego. It cannot stand for a moment. It cannot rise or stand for a moment without grasping the form of a body as I. And having grasped the form of a body as I, it's constantly feeding on other forms by attending to them, by experiencing them. But all these forms that ego grasps are things other than itself, because ego, as Bhagavan describes in that verse, is uruvatra. It's a formless demon. It's got no form of its own. So it cannot have a seemingly separate existence without grasping some form as I. That's why ego always grasps the form of a body as I. But if instead of grasping any form, if it tries to grasp itself, what happens? As he says in that verse, Tedinal autem pidicum. That means if seeking, it takes flight. What that implies is if ego seeks to know its own reality by attending to itself, it will take flight, means it will run away. That's a metaphorical way of saying it will subside and dissolve back into its source. So the only way we can eradicate ego is by attending to ourselves. The more, to the extent to which we attend to ourselves, to that extent, we as ego subside. And when we attend to ourselves so clearly, but we cease to be aware of anything other than ourselves, that is the state of pure awareness. And in that state of pure awareness, which is what we actually are, ego is thereby eradicated. Because ego is a false awareness, whereas the state of pure awareness is the real awareness. When we're aware of ourselves as the pure being awareness, Satchit, that is the moment at which ego is annihilated. So we shouldn't be looking for any temporary state, like a state of peace or trying to be free of mental chatter or anything like that. Mental chatter comes and goes. It's nothing to do with us. Thoughts are nothing to do with that. None of these things anything to do with that. What we are our only concern in self-investigation, we are trying to hold on to what alone is real. What is real is what is permanent. What is permanent is only our own being, I am. So that is what we should be holding on to. So we shouldn't be attending to any objects. We shouldn't be concerned about whether thoughts or mental chatter or anything, let it appear or disappear. What's it to us? The problem is our attending to it, our taking interest in these things. So let there be mental chatter or let there be no mental chatter. It's no concern of ours. Our only concern should be to attend to our own being, to that which is permanent. So I hope this helps to answer that question. Shalini, are there any questions?
Okay, so the question is, I came across a reading on Bhagavan's death experience written by David Godman. There it's mentioned about Akram Mukti, sudden liberation, and how it is distinct from Kram Mukti, or gradual liberation. I've mostly heard your explanations on Bhagavan's teachings related to gradual liberation, which is practicing self-investigation persistently, that is turning attention within to the source of I. Could you please share some insights related to Bhagavan making the distinction between sudden liberation, or Akram Mukti, as opposed to Kram Mukti, which is gradual liberation, in the context of the Advaita Vedanta path?
Okay. Bhagavan's teachings that is, Krama Mukti, gradual liberation, has nothing to do with Bhagavan's teachings. In some contexts, when Bhagavan was asked questions about such things, he replied about them. But Bhagavan's path, that is, Krama Mukti, is an idea that is given in certain sastras. The idea of Krama Mukti is that certain souls who acquire a great deal of punya, a great deal of merit, they go to, if you acquire enough merit, you will go to live in Brahma Loka, which is said to be the highest of all the heavens, and you will remain in Krama Loka till the end of this cycle of creation. That's for crores of years, hundreds of millions of years, whatever. It's a very, very long time. That is, oh, wait a second, I think it's each, that is, Brahma is said to live for 100 years. Each day of Brahma is one cycle of creation, and a pralaya is the night for Brahma. So you have to go through 100 times 365 times cycles of creation until Brahma comes to the end of his life. When Brahma comes to the end of his life, Brahma ceases to exist, and so Brahma Loka also ceases to exist. So all the souls who were in Brahma Loka, they will thereby get mukti. That is Krama Mukti, according to certain sastras. This is purely a matter of belief. Who can say whether this is what degree of truth there is in this? Who knows? And this is no concern of ours, because this has, as I say, this has absolutely nothing to do with Bhagavan's teachings. Though Bhagavan may have commented about this idea when he was asked about it, this is not Bhagavan's teaching. What Bhagavan is teaching is to know and to be what we actually are. When we know what we actually are, ego is thereby annihilated, and that alone is liberation. In verse 40 of Ulladu, Bhagavan makes it very, very clear that if there's so many different ideas about liberation. Some people believe if you go and live with your Ishtadeva, your beloved God, in the world of that beloved God. If you're a Shiva Bhakti, you go to Kailasa. If you're a Vishnu Bhakti, you go to Vaikuntha. If you're a Krishna Bhakti, you go to Goloka, etc., etc. Every god is supposed to have their own world, and living with your favorite god in their world is considered by some to be a type of liberation. So there's so many different ideas of what is liberation. So what Bhagavan says in verse 40 of Ulladu Napadu is that all these different types of liberation, they can be classified into three groups: liberation with form, liberation without form, or liberation with or without form. That is, certain people think that you can, in the state of liberation, you can take form when you want to, and you can remain formless when you want to. So what Bhagavan talks about, he talks about these three types of liberation. He's not saying that there are three types of liberation. He's saying that this is what people believe in. And he says, if it is said that the liberation one may attain is of three kinds: with form, without form, or without form, then I will say destruction of the ego form that distinguishes these different forms of liberation alone is liberation. So for Bhagavan, annihilation of ego alone is liberation. So that's why I say Krama Mukti has absolutely nothing to do with Bhagavan's teachings or with Advaita. It's more to do with it's more to do with the path of karmiya karmas. That is, I think it's more to do with this the Purva Mimamsa, where the aim in Purva Mimamsa is to do lots of yagas and yajnas and other punya karmas to accumulate punya so that you can earn a long time in heaven. And if you earn enough punya, then you remain in Brahma Loka till the end of the cycle of creation, or whatever it is, until the end of the life of Brahma, or whatever it is. This has nothing to do with Advaita Vedanta, absolutely nothing to do with Bhagavan's teachings. This person who wrote this question said, I have mostly heard your explanation of Bhagavan's teachings related to gradual liberation. Bhagavan's teachings are not related to gradual liberation at all. What I am talking about when I talk about Bhagavan's teaching is not gradual liberation. That is the path of self-investigation. The path of self-investigation, that is, ultimately only one moment of self-investigation is necessary, because all we need to do is to attend to ourselves clearly and attend to ourselves perfectly for just one moment, and ego will be annihilated. So liberation, when it's attained, is instantaneous. But because we are not yet willing to surrender ourselves completely, because we are still clinging on to our attachment to this false identity, I am this body, we need to purify the mind. And the most effective means to purify the mind is self-investigation. Purifying the mind means the impurities in the mind are the vasanas, the Vishaya vasanas, the inclination to attend to anything other than ourselves. That is, those are the impurities in our mind. Those Vishaya vasanas are the seeds that give rise to likes, dislikes, desires, attachment, and so on. So long as we have strong Vishaya vasanas, we will not be willing to turn within and attend to ourselves. The more we attend to ourselves, the more we are weakening the Vishaya vasanas and strengthening the opposite vasana, which is what is called Sat vasana. Sat vasana means the Vishaya vasana means the inclination to experience Vishayas, objects or phenomena. Sat vasana is the inclination to experience our being alone. So attending to our being and thereby being as we actually are is strength, that inclination to attend to our being and thereby be as we actually are, that is Satvasana. The more we practice self-investigation, the more we are thereby strengthening Satvasana and weakening Vishaya vasanas. Because it's important to understand the nature of vasanas. Vasanas are inclinations. Inclinations have no strength of their own. That is, whose inclinations are they? They're ego's inclinations. So whatever strength the inclinations, the vasanas seem to have, is the strength that they derive from ego. And how they derive their strength from ego is to the extent to which we allow ourselves to be swayed by any particular vasana, to that extent that vasana is strengthened. So supposing we have take for example, a simple example, someone who is habituated to smoking. Because they've been smoking for many years, they have a very strong inclination to smoke. If they go an hour or two without smoking, they begin to feel restless and uneasy until they can light a cigarette and begin smoking. So why is their inclination to smoke so strong? Because they've been indulging that inclination for so long. If such a person wants to give up smoking, for example, if they come to know smoking is bad for their health and there's many people who smoke die of lung cancer and other diseases, so because they're concerned about their health, they may decide that they want to give up smoking. But it's not easy for a person who's been smoking for many years to give up smoking because that inclination is so strong. But every time they refrain from being swayed by that inclination grows weaker. So in the case of such a person who is a smoker but wants to give up smoking, there are two opposite inclinations, that is, two vasanas pulling in opposite direction. One is the vasana to smoke, and the other is the vasana to avoid smoking in order to protect the health. So there's a struggle between these two vasanas. We are the one who have to decide which vasana we allow ourselves to be swayed by. So the vasanas are just inclinations. We are not bound by our inclinations. So it's up to us to choose which vasanas we allow ourselves to be swayed by. So if we have a strong inclination to smoke and an inclination to not smoke, we can choose to follow the inclination not to smoke, and thereby we can strengthen that inclination and weaken the inclination to smoke. This is how people give up smoking. This is just an example where it's the same with any vasanas we have. If we want to overcome any particular vasana, what we need to do is to avoid being swayed by it. In the case of self-investigation, we are attending only to ourselves. So we are then being swayed by the Sat vasana. Because we are being swayed by the Sat vasana, we are thereby strengthening that vasana. And by attending to ourselves, we are refraining from attending to anything else. So we are thereby weakening all the Vishaya vasanas. That is why persistent practice of self-investigation is the only way forward. This is not gradual liberation. This is the gradual purification of the mind, which is a prerequisite for liberation, prerequisite for annihilating ego. So long as we have a strong inclination to attend to anything other than ourselves, we will not be willing to turn our attention completely within. So this is why patient and persistent practice of self-investigation is necessary. But this has nothing to do with gradual liberation. So I hope this helps to clarify that, answer that question clearly.
Yes. The next question is, I would like to know your comments, or Sri Bhagavan's, or any other of his devotees, on the boredom one feels after doing sadhana. Bhagavan has always said that work and inquiry may go together. And Bhagavan has also said that in the beginning, one may set a fixed time for self-inquiry. My question is, if one is a beginner and very busy from morning to night, where he does not have any time except for bathing, cooking, eating, etc. For example, we may take an Indian working lady having 2 little children whom she takes care of and has very little or no time. And on the other hand, a person has ample time to do self-inquiry and meditation. Will the latter realize the self earlier than the former one? Or is it earnestness and strong desire that matters? This is actually quite a long question. If it's the former, and one has strong desire to do self-realization or for doing inquiry, then does this make her able to realize the self earlier, even though he or she doesn't spend as much time in inquiry and meditation? Or is it the case that work which is forced upon one and being done wholeheartedly is as similar as doing inquiry, but if one searches for work or is interested in seeking pleasure and sense enjoyment, then does this prolong self-realization? Is it true that if a beginner even engages in work and is unable to abide in the self and unable to pay attention to the self or unable to remember the self, but does his work wholeheartedly without thinking anything, without giving any room to think or desire, for having more time for inquiry and meditation, then that one will eventually succeed. And when such doubts occur, they should be rejected at their very place of origin. And one should not give any room for conceptual thinking. Does this work? So this is actually from the same person, but it is 2 questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one is about boredom, and about what should we do about boredom after doing some sadhana, and the other is the longer question on the desire versus the time spent in sadhana.
Yes. Okay, I'll try and answer one by one. Boredom is a state of mind. When boredom arises when we want to be doing something other than what we're doing. If we're doing something that we're interested in, we don't get bored. If we're doing something we're not interested in, then we get bored. So if we feel that sadhana is boring, that means we are not sufficiently interested in knowing what we actually are. So I mean, we shouldn't worry about boredom. What we should be concerned about is about our lack of love to attend to ourselves. If we lack, the only way to cultivate the love to attend to ourselves is by trying to attend to ourselves. The more we attend to ourselves, the more the liking to attend to ourselves will increase. The liking to attend to ourselves is what is called satvasana. If we have strong satvasana, we will not feel bored attending to ourselves. If we feel bored attending to ourselves, we're not actually attending to ourselves, because boredom is something other than ourselves. So if we find boredom arising, that means our attention has been diverted away from ourselves towards some feeling of boredom, some feeling of restlessness. So to whom is this boredom? We need to turn our attention back to ourselves. The solution to all problems, in Bhagavan's path, the solution to all problems is the same. Whatever may appear, to whom does it appear? We need to turn our attention back to ourselves, the one who is experiencing boredom, or whatever else, whatever other phenomenon may appear, whatever other state of mind may appear. Who am I? To whom? Who is experiencing all this? Then regarding the other question, it is not correct to say that anyone doesn't have time to do self-inquiry, because self-inquiry is not, that is, other activities draw our mind away from self-investigation only if we allow our mind to be drawn away from ourselves. Because whatever we may be doing, whatever work or we may be doing, we are always aware, I am. The problem is, though we're always aware I am, we are more interested in being aware of other things than we are in being aware of ourselves. So we focus our attention on other things, on activities, on work, on this or that. And we thereby overlook our own being. That is, we are always aware I am, but we overlook this awareness I am and are constantly attending to other things. Whatever activities of mind, speech, or body may be going on, we are always aware I am. So if we are interested in knowing what we actually are, we can attend to our own being in the midst of any activity. Attention to our being cannot obstruct any activity. We may find as we develop more and more love to attend to ourselves, other activities may to some extent diminish. But ultimately, if a body, mind, speech, or mind are destined to be active, they'll be active. But activity is not an obstacle, because in order to be active, we must be. If we attend to the activity, we are overlooking the being. If we attend to the being, the activity will not affect us in any way, because whatever we may be doing, whatever we may be experiencing, we never cease to be aware I am. So long as we're attending to I am, that's all that is required. Let everything else will go on according to destiny. It need not concern us. So the only thing we need to be concerned about is attending to our being. In order to attend to our being, we of course need great love to do so. So love is absolutely the key. As Bhagavan often said, bhakti is the mother of jnana. That means we can attain jnana only if we have great love to attend to our own being. That is the true bhakti, and that is what is required. Regarding the final question, is it true that if a beginner even engaged in work no, nobody is unable to abide as self. We are all able to attend to ourselves if we want to. And to the extent to which we attend to ourselves, we are thereby being what we actually are. So abiding as self and attending to self are one and the same thing. And he asked whether doing one's work is similar as doing inquiry. Nothing is similar to doing inquiry. Attending to ourself alone is self-investigation, and self-investigation can continue in spite of any amount of activity if we have love to attend to ourselves. But love to attend to ourselves is key. I mean, he eventually asks, when such doubts occur, they should be rejected at their very place of origin. One should not give room for any conceptual thinking, does it work? That is conceptual thinking. That is the mind, because it's the nature of the body. According to destiny, activities of body, speech, and mind go on. So conceptual thinking may be going on. But even when conceptual thinking is going on, who is the one who is experiencing that conceptual thinking? To whom did this conceptual thinking appear? If we are turning our attention back towards ourselves, let the conceptual thinking go on, let anything go on. What we need to do is to stop constantly dwelling on these doubts. That is, some people go on and on asking questions ad infinitum without any, they continue raising one doubt after another. This is really not very helpful. As Bhagavan often said, Sandehi Yarendru Sandehi, doubt who is the doubter. In other words, turn your whatever, if you've got a doubting mind, turn all your doubts on yourself. Who am I? That is what we need to investigate. That's the only thing, that the only doubt which, or the only question which should interest us is, who am I? But we can't answer this question just by asking this question. We need to investigate and see what we actually are. So we can go on asking questions for all eternity, but what is the use? Ultimately, there's only one thing we need to know. We need to know what we actually are. We need to be aware of ourselves as we actually are. And for that, self-investigation is the only way. So thinking is useful only to the extent to which it directs our attention back towards ourselves. If our thinking is drawing our mind outwards, then leave such thinking and turn the attention back within. If our attention is helping us to turn the attention back within, okay, well and good. But the attention can only point the way. The thinking can only point the way. It cannot go with us. So we have to leave aside all thinking ultimately and attend only to our own being. So I hope that answers that person's questions.
So the first question is, could you please share Sadhu Om's first encounter with Bhagavan? What do you remember about his first encounter?
Well, I remember what I've heard. That is, when he was coming in the train to see Bhagavan for the first time, he composed one or two songs, I can't remember. One of them was called Quilo de Coral, and I think there was another song he composed at the same time. When he came to Bhagavan, when he first entered Bhagavan's hall, he saw what appeared to be an empty sofa. But people were prostrating to the empty sofa, so he also prostrated to the empty sofa. And then when he looked up, he slowly started seeing some bright form forming on the sofa, and then that brightness slowly solidified into the form of Bhagavan. So Bhagavan was actually sitting on the sofa all the time, but when he went there, he saw without any form, and then he saw that a light that took on the form of Bhagavan. Then he sang that song, Quilo de Coral, to Bhagavan. Bhagavan took it and he made some small corrections. He changed the title. I think the title was previously Quilo de Coral means quail means a South Indian cuckoo is called a quail. It's a particular species of bird. Quilo de Coral, I think, means speaking with a cuckoo bird, and that was the title Bhagavan gave, but Sadhu Om had given a message sent through a cuckoo bird. That is, he was addressing the song to a cuckoo to carry his message to Bhagavan. That was the idea of the song. And then when Bhagavan saw that song and the other song, then he said, he asked Sadhu Om, have you shown this to Mudagana? And Sadhu Om asked, who's Mudagana? He didn't ever, he was new, he didn't know anything about. And then Bhagavan said, he lives there in Palakottu. Then Sadhu Om asked, where is Palakottu? And then Bhagavan told him, if you go out the ashram at the back and along the foot of the hill, there's a colony where sadhus live. Sadhu Om said afterwards, he felt very, when he thought back on it, he felt very foolish. He could have asked anyone where Palakottu is. Why to trouble Bhagavan by asking where is Palakottu? Anyway, so Bhagavan directed him to Mudagala. So he went to see Mudagala, who was at that time in his small hut in Palakottu. And he said, Bhagavan has asked me to show you these verses. And from that day onwards, his close friendship with Mudagala was formed by Bhagavan. Later, Mudagala told Sadhu Om that the day before Sadhu Om had come to Bhagavan, there was some talk in Bhagavan's presence. Some people were saying that nowadays the level of Tamil education is not what it used to be. It's a very, people aren't learning proper literary Tamil, and it's all about English education, and education is all about earning money. So we can't expect to see great poets like Mudagana and other such poets in this younger generation. And at that point, Bhagavan intervened and said, no, it is not so. It is not to do with education. See, there have been so many great poets in the past who have become great poets, not because of any great education, but just because of divine inspiration. Jnana Sambandha became a poet when he was a small child. And Aranagiriya wasn't an educated person. He lived he was the son of a Devadasi, and he had lived a life of debauchery until the moment when Mudagala came to save him. So he had no literary education, but by divine grace he became a great poet. Bhagavan said, when the divine inspiration is there, even someone who has no education or little education can be a great poet. So that was a conversation the day before Sadhu Om came there. Then after Sadhu Om had come and sung this song, and then Bhagavan had sent him to Mudagala. When Mudagala next came to the hall, Bhagavan said to him, see, just yesterday what we were talking about, today a perfect example has come. That means that that implies that Sadhu Om has that. He's a great poet by divine inspiration. He wasn't completely uneducated. Of course, he was educated up to what in those days was called matriculation, which was sort of high school standard. But he didn't have any. He wasn't a great Tamil Pandit like Mudagala. Mudagala was a Tamil Pandit and school teacher before coming to Bhagavan. So he had studied Tamil much more deeply, but Sadhu Om was mostly self-taught. One thing Sadhu Om told me, there's a particular meter in Tamil called Vemba. Bhagavan has composed many of his works in Vemba meter, like Uludunapta and so many other works he's composed in Vemba. This is the sort of standard verse in Tamil. If a poet cannot compose a Vemba, they're not considered a proper poet. So it's the sort of the benchmark of a proper poet is the ability to compose Vemba. But the rules of Vemba are actually quite complex rules there are. Sadhu Om told me that he was able to compose Vembas long before he actually learned all the rules. because he just having read and heard many members being recited, he was able to recognize the patterns, and therefore he was able to compose members, and only later he came to know all the rules that formed those patterns. So he was that poetic talent came to him naturally, and that's what Bhagavan was referring to there, by divine inspiration.
Michael, which year, I didn't catch, which year did Sadhu Om come to Bhagavan?
It was on the day he arrived was the 6th of July 1946.
Towards the end of Bhagavan's physical existence.
Yeah. And then for before coming to Bhagavan, it was just shortly before that he had come to know about Bhagavan. He had come across Ramana-vichara, which is a Tamil biography of Bhagavan written by Sudananda Bharati, which is based on self-realization. It was only after reading that he understood. When reading the book, he came to know about Bhagavan, and only when he came to the end of the book did he see there's no ending of Bhagavan's life, so he understood, oh, maybe he's still alive. Then he started to make inquiries among his friends and office colleagues. Does anyone know about Ramanashram? Are there any rules or restrictions about going to visit it? And someone advised him, there's a devotee of Bhagavan who lives nearby called Janaki Mata. If you go and meet her, she can tell you all about how to visit Ramanashram and everything. So he had gone and met Janaki Mata, and she had told him, we're going to Ramanashram. I'm going with some other people to Ramanashram next weekend. You can come with us. So Sadhu Om accompanied her. So even before meeting Bhagavan, he had met Janaki Mata, and there was a very close bond between him and Janaki Mata, like a sort of like a mother-son type of relationship that was there. So after first coming to Bhagavan, then every 2 or 3 weeks he would visit Ramanashram. But he was still working in the office. Then he decided what's the use of working in an office when Bhagavan is there? I should be in Tiruvannamalai. So when he was coming for the Golden Jubilee celebrations were on the 1st of September 1946. So that's just less than 2 months after he first came to Bhagavan. He decided at that time that he was going to resign his job. He wrote a letter, a letter of resignation, which he was planning to give to Bhagavan, but he made a mistake of telling Janaki Mata that he was going to do so. So before he was able to give this letter to Bhagavan, Janaki Mata said to Bhagavan, oh, Bhagavan, he said he's going to resign his job. Please tell him it's not necessary, or something like that. She said that out of her motherly affection. And Bhagavan said, oh, that's not necessary. Why to resign the job? So then Sadhu Om wasn't able to, because Bhagavan had said that, he wasn't able to resign his job. But a few months later, he decided that the mistake he had made was informing someone else before informing Bhagavan. So when he came at the time of Bhagavan's Jayanti, which I think was just at the beginning of January 1947, when he came to Bhagavan, he had written a letter of resignation. He put it in an unsealed envelope. He gave it to Bhagavan. Bhagavan opened it, read it, put it back in the envelope and returned it to him without saying anything. He took that as Bhagavan's blessing. So he sent the letter of resignation. So he was actually living there from the beginning of 1947 up till sometime in the summer of 1950. He was living in one of the huts in Palakottu. And so he was actually living there for just over 3 years during Bhagavan's lifetime. And then after Bhagavan left the body, many devotees left, but at first he had decided to stay on, but then Janaki Mata asked him to come back to Tanjore because she wanted to publish a Tamil magazine about Bhagavan, the Tamil journal about Bhagavan, which was called Arul. So he returned to Tanjore and he edited that magazine for her for about 5 years. And only in 1955 he returned and settled permanently in Tiruvannamalai.
Beautiful. Thank you, Michael.
Right.
The next question is it right to say that when we practice, we perceive the perceiver, and that the perceiver is the ego, which is a mix of the real I and the unreal I, the agyani? And if so, is it right to say that we should hold on to that perceiver as best as possible and at all times?
Yes, yes. It's the perceiver is ego, as you say. Ego is not a mixture of the real I and the unreal I. That is there's only one I. That one I, in its pure condition, is Satchit, is pure being awareness. When that same one I is seemingly mixed and conflated with adjuncts, as I am this body, that I that is aware of itself as I am this body, that is ego. It's not that they're two different I's, it's the same one I mixed and conflated with adjuncts is what appears as ego. But what is always real is only that one pure I. So all we need to attend to, it can be explained in different ways. We can say you have to attend to the seer, the knower, the perceiver, in other words, attend to ego, or we can say you have to attend to your own being. It amounts to the same, because I'll just, to put in context, I'll just say something. That is, there are some people who have an idea that self-inquiry is only attending to ego, you have to hold on to the I thought, they say. And they say you can't investigate the real self. That's what some people say, but that shows a lack of understanding, because, and we can illustrate this by an example. Supposing we're walking along a path in the dim light of dusk with Bhagavan. We see something lying on the path ahead of us. To us, it looks like a snake. So we say, oh, Bhagavan, Bhagavan, there's a snake, we can't go forward. Bhagavan knows very well that it's just a rope. So Bhagavan assures us, no, it's not a snake, it's just a rope. But we still feel fear, because to us it looks like a snake. So in order to remove our fear, Bhagavan knows we have to see what it actually is. So Bhagavan will say to us, look at it carefully and see what it is. If we then ask Bhagavan, which it should we look at? Should we look at the snake or at the rope? What will Bhagavan say? He'll say, look at the snake, because for us it seems to be a snake. If we look at the snake, what do we see? Oh, it's not a snake, it's just a rope. So when people ask Bhagavan, in who am I, is the I ego or the self? Bhagavan said ego, because those people have an idea that there are two different I's. So the I that they know is ego. Okay, attend to ego. If you look at ego carefully enough, what do you see? You see the pure awareness that we actually are. So it's whether we describe it, if you pay close attention to Bhagavan's words, some places he talks about he does refer to, if we seek ego, it takes flight. If we investigate ego, it takes flight. But actually in that sentence, when he said Tedin alotum pidicum, he doesn't, there's neither a subject nor an object for seeking. It's simply if seeking. What it implies is if we seek the reality of ego. But there are other places when he talks about investigating ego. There are places where he talks about investigating the reality of ego. For example, in verse 14 of Ulunab, he said, if one Tanmayin Unmeye, he said, investigating the reality of the first person. Wait a second, I'll just get the verse. In verse 14 of Ulunab, he says, if the first person exists, second and third persons will exist. Here, first person, Tanmay, means ego. Second and third persons mean all objects or phenomena. Everything other than ego is second and third persons. And then he says, Tanmayin Unmeye Tan Aindu Tanmayarin Munile Padake Mudivutru. That means if oneself investigating the reality of the first person ceases to exist, second and third persons will come to an end, and the nature that shines as one alone is oneself, the state of oneself. So there he talks about investigating the reality of the first person. The first person is ego. The reality of the first person is the pure awareness that we actually are. In other places, he talks about investigating the place from which ego rises. He uses the word place metaphorically. That means the source from which ego rises. The source from which ego rises is our own being, what we actually are. That is, what exists in sleep is only our own being, I am. From that arises ego in waking and dream. So the source from which ego rises is our own being. So when he says investigating the place from which ego rises, he means investigating our own being. So, but in practice, it doesn't matter whether we think we're investigating ego or the perceiver or knower, or think we're investigating the underlying reality of the pure I am. It amounts to the same, because there's only one I there. Just like there are not two things, a snake and a rope. There's only one thing. What is actually there is only a rope, but it seems to be a snake. Likewise, what is actually shining as I is only pure Satchit, pure being awareness. But it seems to be ego because of the superimposition of adjuncts. But I is always only one. I hope that that answered that question clearly.
Yeah. Next question is, you have said that Ramana was often moved by music. Which kirtan of Ramana's would you recommend to sing along to that captures the profound bhakti found in Stuti Panchakam?
Well, all the Stuti Panchakam, I mean, there's so much wonderful meaning in all the verses of Stuti Panchakam, but it's very difficult to choose between them, but Aksharamla is very, very special. But well, Sadhu Om often used to say, even if you don't understand the meaning of Bhagavan's words, merely hearing Bhagavan's words has its own efficacy, because his words have their own power to turn the mind within. But if you're able to understand the meaning, then the efficacy is increased many-fold. So it's good to hear or recite Bhagavan's words, but it's still better to do so understanding the meaning. So all of Bhagavan's works, I mean, every word that came from Bhagavan's mouth is so precious. And particularly there's Arunachala Stuti Panchakam, where he's really poured out his heart in love, his love for Arunachala. And Stuti Panchakam is not only, I mean, the bhakti and jnana are so beautifully interwoven there, because in Bhagavan's path, bhakti and jnana are inseparable. So, yeah, I mean, I think for anyone who has have a good fortune to relish it, there's nothing as sweet as Aksharamlai. I mean, Aksharamlai is wonderful. But then if you think about any of Bhagavan's verses, when we're dwelling on the verse, it seems each verse, when we dwell on it, this seems to be the best of all. Because it's Bhagavan's. It can't be anything but wonderful. So I'm not, I mean, I can say Aksharamlai is very special, but I can also say every other work is very special. So, and the thing about these Bhagavan's works, they're very, very deep in meaning and deep in their power. So we can go on for a lifetime dwelling on his words, and we get drawn deeper and deeper into the meaning of the words, into the barber of the words, and thereby into our own being. I hope that's an adequate answer to that question.
There's a question from Tony. Tony, would you like to ask the question? Tony?
Yeah, sorry. Hi, Michael.
Hi.
You kind of touched on this already, not surprisingly. I was wondering, in our quest to attend to ourselves, is it a bit naive to look at it from a point of view of a degree of separation? So what I mean is, we could say that I don't see, I don't hear, etc., but I am conscious that I see and I'm conscious that I hear. To view the body more as just an instrument, so just like a microphone or a camera, and then to attend to the formless demon of the ego, we kind of have a distancing where we sit back and watch it performing its antics from a distance. I don't know if that sounds too naive.
We can't really watch the antics of ego, because to the extent to which we attend to ego, in other words, to the extent to which we attend to ourselves, ego subsides. So if we want to put an end to the antics of ego, the simple way to do so is simply attend to what is this I that's rising with so much agitation and desire and all these things. Just watch that I and it will subside. So the most effective way, some people think that in order to do self-inquiry, you first have to calm down the mind. You do pranayama and then you can calm the mind and then you can do self. But that's all unnecessary, because the most effective way to calm down the mind is to attend to I. Whenever you find yourself in an agitated state, just attend to I, and you'll find that automatically a calmness. That is the way to step back from everything, is to attend to I. Because by attending to I, we are thereby subsiding and separating ourselves from everything else. Is that clear?
Yeah. Yes, very clear. Thank you. Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah. That's the only way we can separate ourselves from everything else, because the nature of ego is constantly grasping things other than itself. So only if we as ego try to grasp ourselves can we separate ourselves from everything else.
Yeah.
And everything else will automatically drop off to the extent to which we hold on to ourselves. The problem is our reluctance to do so, because we still have so much strong desire and attachment for things other than ourselves. We are not willing to let go, hold on to ourselves firmly enough, because if we hold on to ourselves firmly enough, we are thereby permanently letting go of everything. So that's why that willingness to surrender is essential. Without that wholehearted, all-consuming love to surrender ourselves completely, we cannot succeed in this path. But the only way to cultivate that love is by patient and persistent practice.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you for a very good question.
It seems strange to me that in Arunachala Aksharamalai, Bhagavan speaks to Arunachal in the second place. I think perhaps it means in the second
Second
person.
person, yes, yes.
Person, yes. I assume the poem to be a teaching tool. This being accepted, my understanding is that I, the jiva, am talking to my pure self and plead for this pure self to take me in and stop my jiva sense from dragging me as a jiva outward. In identifying as a young girl, offering seemingly the only thing, bodily identification, to my pure self. Is it called a marital bhava? Is this dualistic request for unity the illustrated means to turn inward? Is this dualistic request for unity the illustrated means to turn inward?
Yeah. That is, as soon as we rise as ego, we create a sense of separation. Because we limit ourselves with this body, this whole world seems separate from us. And we also seem to be something separate from God. Because God is the infinite whole. If we are this little thing, then how can we be the infinite whole? So the seeming separation is created by our rising as ego. So it's appropriate in the ego state to pray to our own reality, and because it's expressed in words, yes, Bhagavan addresses Aranatra as you, but that is the soul's longing for merging back in its own source. And Bhagavan makes it, I mean, in so many places in Aksharamala, Bhagavan makes it so clear that Aranatra is what is shining in my heart as I. I mean, he's repeatedly talking about Aranatra shining within. And he sometimes explicitly says in verse 2 of Aranatra Pancharatnam, he says, you always dance in my heart as I. So Aranatra is I. But because we have limited ourselves with this body, Aranatra seems to be something separate from ourselves. So we pray as you in order to be swallowed back into Aranatra, which is our own reality, our own being.
Thank you.
Now, the Aksharamala is a prayer for the dissolution of that separation. That is why that bridal bhava, the Matara bhava or Nayaki bhava, is such an appropriate one, because when at the human level, that love between the husband and wife, the lover and the beloved, is a yearning for non-separation. When you're in love, you want to be one with the one you love. So that is, in human terms, that is the best analogy for the longing of the soul for the complete union, complete merging in God. So it's a very, very appropriate bhava.
So the next question is, I understand that grace and self are synonymous. Are there such things as blessings on this path? If so, what would qualify as a blessing?
Subsidence of ego. To the extent to which ego subsides, to that extent we are blessed.
The next question. Yeah. Says, good evening. My question is as follows. If the real self, Satchit, always exists and is never born or dies, then who is the unreal that is born, or who has any prarabdha to experience past karma? If the birth is unreal, then why bother about that? You may ask if you find it relevant, because I may not have much knowledge.
Who is asking this question? The question is not being asked by Sat-Chit, it's being asked by the one who feels itself in some way limited. So long as we experience limitation, we will always be dissatisfied. So the normal way in which we seek satisfaction is outside. We think that by acquiring this or that, acquiring money, acquiring learning, acquiring pleasures, acquiring this, acquiring that, we think acquisition is the means to satisfaction, because we feel we're lacking something. The more we can acquire, the more satisfied we'll be, we think. But actually, the more we acquire, the more dissatisfied we are. That is the nature of acquisition. The true satisfaction is to be found not in acquiring anything, but in giving up everything. And the means to give up everything is to turn within and to hold on to our own being. As Bhagavan says in verse 26 of Vuludnaptu, if ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. If ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. Ego itself is everything. Therefore, investigating what this is giving up everything. Investigating what this is means investigating what ego is. If to the extent to which we investigate ego, ego thereby subsides. And to the extent ego subsides, everything else subsides along with it. So if we investigate ourselves keenly enough, ego will subside and dissolve back into its source. And everything else will dissolve along with it. That's why he says, investigating what this ego is giving up everything. So in order to go deep in this path of investigation, in order to go deep enough so that we lose ourselves completely, we must be willing to give up everything. So people think, oh, Bhagavan didn't attach importance to renunciation. That is not correct. Bhagavan's path is the path of complete renunciation. Bhagavan didn't attach importance to external renunciation. Bhagavan said external renunciation, taking sannyasa or whatever, that's according to prarabdha. But the real renunciation is the subsidence of ego. And as I said in answer to a previous question, the true blessing is there's no blessing other than subsidence of ego. Because to the extent to which ego subsides, it dissolves back into the pure being that we actually are, and that pure being is grace. So if we want to partake fully of grace, we need to subside. The more we subside, the more we lose ourselves in grace. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa gave a beautiful analogy in this context. He said, the rain is always pouring, but when it falls on a mound, it flows off. It gathers only in the low-lying places. The rain there is an analogy for grace. The grace is showering on every one of us. But the more we rise as ego, the more the grace, the benefit of grace, it all flows off us. The more we subside, the more we drown in that grace. We will be submerged in grace to the extent to which we subside. That's why Bhagavan's path is a path of subsidence. In the second last sentence, the third sentence of the final paragraph of Nana, Bhagavan says, Evlo kevlo tandu nadikaromo, avlo kavlo nanmayundu. It's a beautiful sentence in Tamil. Unfortunately, it's a little difficult to convey the force of it in English. Evlo kevlo means to what extent, to what extent. Tandu is an adverbial participle but means sinking low. Nadikarom means, literally means we walk, but it implies we conduct ourselves, we behave, we conduct ourselves in this world. To that extent there's goodness. So the meaning of that sentence is, to what extent we conduct ourselves sinking low, to that extent there is goodness. So for Bhagavan, what is the definition of goodness? Subsidence, subsidence, subsidence. The more we subside, the better it is for us and for everyone. If we want to find happiness, we'll find happiness only in subsidence. And subsidence means letting go of everything other than our own being, holding on to our own being and thereby letting go of everything. That is the way to subside back into our own being. And our being itself is grace, as Bhagavan emphasized. And it's only by grace that we get the love to hold on to our own being. The way to cultivate that love is to hold on to our being. So whatever way we look at it, Bhagavan's teachings are all about just holding on to I and subsiding back within until we're eventually swallowed.
The next question is, in the book, Be As You Are, in which you are acknowledged, is it true that when asked about the Swarupa of a living guru, Bhagavan said, a proper guru is to whom your mind is attuned, one who looks at all with an equal eye, has unshakable courage at all times, and is capable of attracting others even with his or her eyes, just as a magnet attracts iron. In the documentary Gyani, there was video footage of Bhagavan where you would see him shaking from the head. What was the reason for this?
Okay, two different questions. That is some of the that is Be As You Are is a compilation. Most of it is taken from books like talks, Day by Day, Maharshi's Gospel, and other such sources, which are second-hand recordings. That is, people recorded what they heard Bhagavan saying. So it's been filtered through their mind, their understanding, and so we can never be sure of the accuracy of the recording in such books. Some of the passages, not many, but quite a few, from Guru Vachaka Kavai, because when David was compiling that book, Sadhu Om and I shared with him our translation of Guru Vachaka Kavai. So some passages he's taken from Guru Vachaka Kavai. Sometimes we also made our translations of and other works available. So sometimes David has also used passages from our translations of Bhagavan's own original writings. So when you read passages in Be As You Are, you have to look at the footnotes and see where they come from. And so I don't know how accurate that particular passage you're referring to is. Ultimately, we don't need to be told what is the sign of a real guru. When the real guru draws us to himself, to itself, let's say, because guru is beyond all gender. When the real guru draws us to itself, there will be no doubt in our mind that we have found our guru. So it's, yeah, we will all, I mean, if we are attracted to Bhagavan, we will know in our heart that Bhagavan is our guru, and there will be no doubt about it, and there'll be no inclination. After we're attracted to Bhagavan, there'll be no inclination to go anywhere else, to anyone else. Because Bhagavan is, I mean, what can we get from anyone that we cannot get directly from Bhagavan? And the other part, what was the last part of the question was something completely different. I've forgotten what the last part of that question was.
Says that in the documentary Gyani, there was video footage of Bhagwan where you would see him shaking from the head. What was the reason for this?
Right. Once that was towards the end, I mean, that was in the later years of his life. His head did shake a lot. Even earlier, his body was, Bhagavan's body wasn't so old when he left the body. His body was just 70 years old, but in the later years of his life, his body seemed older than it actually was. At one point, a devotee asked Bhagavan, "Bhagavan, why is your body shaking?" And Bhagavan replied, "If you tie a big elephant in a small hut, the whole hut will shake." That Bhagavan simply said that much. That means that what is shining in that body is the supreme reality. I mean, the power that is driving the whole universe. So that poor frail body had to carry such that Bhagavan's analogy was like tying a big elephant in a small hut. The whole hut will shake. So Bhagavan's body was shaking.
The next one is, we usually hear about having a desire to know who we actually are. However, isn't all desire the work of the ego? So we could say we should have love to know ourselves. How should we distinguish between love and desire in this path of knowing the self?
Desire is for anything other than ourself. Love is for ourself alone. The love that we have for things other than ourselves is desire. The desire that we have for our own being is love. You can put it that way. Because desire is always seeking to acquire. But the love to know ourselves is not a love to acquire anything, it's a love to let go of everything. By knowing ourselves, we don't gain anything, we lose everything. And that loss of everything is itself the greatest gain. Bhagavan often used to say, if jnana were a new knowledge to be acquired, it would be lost, because whatever comes has to go. But jnana is eternal, it's our own nature. So we're not acquiring something new, we are just giving up all that is unreal, and the real alone remains.
The next question is, how did Bhagavan define suffering? Is there a succinct and universal definition we could all agree upon?
Rising of ego is suffering. Subsidence of ego is happiness. At the end of the 14th paragraph of Nana, that's the paragraph where he's talking about happiness, he says, Jagam embadu nineve. What is called the world is only thought. Jagam Mariam Podu adavdu ninevatra podum manam anandate anubhavikindradu. When the world disappears, that is when thought ceases, the mind experiences happiness. Jagam tondram podu adu dukate anubhavikindradu. When the world appears, it experiences dukkam, it experiences unhappiness, dissatisfaction. So when the world disappears, we experience happiness. When the world appears, we experience happiness. But if we go back to the 4th paragraph, I think it's in the 4th paragraph where he says, Manam Atma-surupatinindru Velipadam Podu Jagam Tondram. When the mind comes out from Atma-surupa, the world appears. Therefore, when the world appears, Swarupa does not appear. And when Swarupa appears or shines, the world does not appear. So when he says here, when the mind comes out from Atma-swarupa, the world appears. And when he says there that when the world appears, the mind experiences misery, that means when we come out of Atma-swarupa, when we rise as ego, we experience misery. When we subside, then only will the world disappear, and then we will experience happiness. So what it boils down to is rising as ego is dukkha, subsiding and dissolving back into our source is sukham. Dukkha means unhappiness or dissatisfaction. Sukham means happiness or satisfaction. So the only way, if we want to be happy, we need to subside back into our source. Every night in sleep, we subside back into our source and we're happy, but again, we arise in the morning. So we want to subside in such a way that we never rise again. In order to subside so we never rise again, we need to investigate ourselves. As Bhagavan makes clear, for example, in verse 27 of Uludunapadu, what he says in verse 27 is, the state in which I is without rising is the state in which we are as that. That means Brahman. And then he says in the next sentence, without investigating the place where I rises, how to reach the annihilation of oneself in which I does not rise. Here he says the annihilation of oneself to make it clear, but what he's talking about is not just a temporary state in which I doesn't rise, but the permanent state in which I does not rise. And he says, without investigating the place where I rises, how to reach that annihilation of oneself. That's a rhetorical question that clearly implies the only way to reach the annihilation of oneself is to investigate the place where I rises. The place where I rises, that is, he uses the word place metaphorically. It's not literally a place. It is our own being. So investigating our being is the means to annihilate ourselves. The annihilation of ourself is the state in which I does not ever rise. So that is the state of eternal happiness. That is our real state.
The last question is regarding the ego. My ego most often goes to pride in reverse with low self-esteem, feeling less than, etc. Is that just as problematic as thinking we're better than others? I suppose the answer is to always subside within. It's just hard sometimes in the challenges of life. If we get disinterested in things, people think we're depressed, and we might even feel depressed. We still have to live this outer life. It's not easy. So I'm just curious, Michael, if you have some thoughts on this. Thank you so much.
What we actually are is just a pure awareness I am. Thinking I am this or I am that is ego. Thinking I am superior is a strong form of ego. Even thinking I am inferior is a subtle form of ego. What all Bhagavan has asked us to do is to hold on to I am, hold on to our own being. We need not think, in Nana, Bhagavan says, however great a sinner one may be, if instead of lamenting, oh, I'm a sinner, how can I be saved? If one completely gives up, if one clings firmly to self-attentiveness and thereby gives up the thought that one is a sinner, one will certainly be saved. So, however great a sinner we may be, let's not dwell on the thought I am a sinner. Let's just hold on to I am. However superior we may think we are, however inferior we may think we are, instead of dwelling on that thought, let us hold on to I am. Ego manifests itself in so many different forms, but it's all, whatever form it manifests in, it's always an adjunct conflated. I am this or I am that. I'm superior, I'm inferior. I'm a saint, I'm a sinner. I'm this, I'm that. These are all false identifications. The reality is only I. Who am I? I am I, nothing other than I. So there's no inferior or no superior or inferior. So if we want to follow this path with all dedication, we need to give up all, that is, lose interest in all external things, lose interest in the person that we seem to be. Let this person be inferior or superior. What's it matter? Who am I? This person is not what we actually are. So we need to break that identification. We can break that identification only to the extent to which we hold on to our own being. The more we hold on to our own being, the more we are thereby separating ourselves from this false identity. And then thoughts of inferior, superior, all become meaningless. Superiority lies in subsiding. The more we subside, the more we rise high. The more we rise high, the more we separate ourselves from ego. I mean, if we rise outwardly, that is, we are separating ourselves from what we actually are and courting misery. The more we subside back within, when I say by subsiding back within, we rise high, I don't mean rising in a literal sense, but we are elevated to our real state of pure being by subsiding.
Should we just ask if this is sort of enough for the person who asked it? I think it explains everything, but is there anything more which you'd like to ask on this question? Or a bit more explanation? Jen?
Nope, that's great. Thank you so much, Michael.
That's okay? All right. Thank you. There's one more question. Seeking hope on the path, I ask, did many people in the ashram or in general actually become completely liberated?
What does it matter who is liberated? Let everyone be liberated. Are we liberated? That's what Bhagavan's path is, a path of Atma-vichara. That's investigating ourselves. Asking questions about other people is an Atma-vichara. So what does it matter who is liberated or not liberated? We need to know what we ourselves actually are.
In case it's helpful to the person asking, sort of the people who were there or who have been attracting to Bhagavan's teaching have been precisely to find their self, to be themselves, to be liberated. And of course, people went deeper and deeper into this, and what happened.
Yeah, exactly.
But we may not, but we need not concern ourselves.
We need not
exactly
concern
what happened.
ourselves. Yeah.
Yes, so this was a comment which says Krishnamurti mentioned that one cannot fear the unknown or death, but one can only fear losing what is known and confusing that for the unknown. Is our perceived fear of the unknown, that is death, what really blocks our ability to surrender and fully attend to the true I? That is, the ego fully utilizes our fear of losing everything we know as a way of blocking our fully attending to the I and surrendering.
Fear is related to desire. If we desire something, we fear to lose it. If we have no desire or attachment for anything, we will have no fear. Fear arises because we have desire. And desire is the very nature of ego. So long as we rise as ego, we will inevitably have desires, we'll inevitably have likes and dislikes, and consequently we'll have fears. The only solution to all these problems is to cut the root. Desire and fear are like leaves and branches on a tree. If you cut the leaves and branches off, more leaves and branches will sprout. the means to permanently put an end to all the sprouting of all leaves and branches is to cut the root. That is what Bhagavan's path is about. The root of for whom is desire, for whom is fear. It's all for only for ego. It's only as ego that we have desire. It's only as ego that we have fear. In sleep, we do not experience any desire or any fear because we have not risen as ego. As soon as we rise as ego in waking or dream, we experience desire and fear. So if we want to go beyond desire and fear, we need to eradicate ego and be it. And to eradicate ego, we just need to be as we actually are. And for that, we need to attend to ourselves. We need to hold on to our being and thereby lose ourselves in our being. And when we lose ourselves, we will lose desire and fear along with ourself. Ourself means ego. That's why Bhagavan said, investigating what this ego is giving up everything. That everything includes desire and fear.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
It was a wonderful session. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for attending. And we'll see you again in second week of November. And let's close with Bhagwan's mantra. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.